Now, you might not know this word compartmentalization, but I happen to think that women are geniuses, gurus at compartmentalization, but I would like us to become less skilled at doing so. We have this habit of slicing ourselves up and putting different parts of ourselves in different boxes, and we only open them on special occasions. We say, well, this is how I am when I'm with my girlfriends. I can let my hair down. This is how I behave. So the way that I'm having fun with you now is how I am at home. I didn't realize that person could come on stage too. That's why I was coming out to do this and give you my serious And you were losing out on all of this time that we're having together. And then on the weekends, I'd play like these nightclubs where I do the funky stuff, and I could be funky, but I wouldn't be serious at all. I wouldn't tell any serious stories. It was all like, let's have a party. And then I'd go to church and I'd talk about God, or I'd preach or minister, and we could talk about God there because he's in church. And then I had like 3 and 4 different versions of myself. There were all these different versions that didn't exist at once. Let me tell you the magic that breaks out when you say, if each of these parts are good enough for their own space, what happens if I dare to bring them all together at the same time? You have to start believing that there is no part of you that's an accident. Much of the reason that we box these parts up and forget about them is because we think they're not appropriate for a certain occasion. I think that there is nothing about you that is accidental, down to your physical design. I had a dentist appointment about a year ago, and when I got done with just a routine cleaning, my dentist said, Jade, do you want to fix that? I said, fix what? And he said, your overbite. I was like, what's an overbite? He says, well, it's when your top set of teeth, they kind of protrude a little bit over your bottom set. Kind of like you say buck teeth, they stick out. And I'm like, oh my, I never knew I had an overbite. Is it bad? And he said, well, an average overbite, I can usually stick my pinky finger up there. He says, on yours, I can give my whole thumb up there. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to die from this overbite. So I'm so worried. Do you know how I left that place so insecure? I was so worried now about this flaw I didn't even know I had until I went to the dentist. So now I'm going back. I'm looking through all my pictures at home, looking at my smiles. Looks like I'm trying to bite the person's head off in the picture. I see it everywhere. I go to the mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like Bugs Bunny. I'm so self-conscious. I start covering my smile, and I usually laugh with my head back, and now I'm like, ooh. So I'm thinking, then I get angry. You know how you have denial first and you have anger. Now I'm like, why did nobody tell me about this? My family doesn't love me. They didn't tell me. So I go to my husband. We have been together since we were 15 years old. So I know. It's my high school sweetheart. And I thought, surely he would have told me if this was an issue. He would have told me. So I went to him and I said, sweetie, the dentist says I have a really bad overbite. Did you know this? He said, well, sweetie, that's why I call you my little beaver. What? You didn't tell me? I felt betrayed. I about had a breakdown over this thing. I started thinking, maybe I need to get braces. They were trying to sell me on the Invisalign and all these things. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing TV, if I'm going to be doing concerts, I got to get this fixed because I'm a profile. They're going to think like, oh, my teeth. So I started getting really worried about this thing. And I started saying, okay, wait, no, Jade, you're exactly how you're supposed to be. Why do you have an overbite? Why do you have an overbite? This is not an accident. Then I had this epiphany. Started looking back at my childhood. I was that kid who did so many activities. I played 5 sports, 7 instruments, was student body president every year, senior class president, marching band, drum line, eventually drum major, got to Northwestern, majored in music, but also started a percussion and drum ensemble called Boom Shaka. And people would always say, Jade, you have to be so careful. You're going to overextend yourself. You're going to bite off more than you can chew. I thought, oh my gosh, they were always wrong. I always got the job done when everybody else was, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like, what? Give me something else, right? So I'm thinking, I was literally pre-designed to bite off more than the average person can chew. Do you know the supernatural confidence that comes when you find out even your flaws have a divine purpose in your existence? Do you know how tall you were? I was smiling all the time because I could own it now. This is not an accident. It's a reminder when I look in the mirror, do not be overwhelmed. This looks like enough, a lot, but you're enough for it. You have always exceeded expectations. There is something about you that others have pointed out as a flaw. There is some part of you, something that has happened to you that you have put away and you thought, this is the worst part of me. I dare you to re-examine it because there are no accidents, nothing you have been through, nothing that has happened to you. No part of you is not as it's supposed to be. There is a supernatural confidence that comes when you really believe that no part of you is an accident. It's supernatural. I make the distinction because there's natural man-made confidence. That's when you learn how to appear confident. You shake hands this way, you drop your voice a few notches, you stand in this power pose when you're in a meeting, all these different things. So you learn all these ways to be confident and you try them on. That's man-made confidence. It never lasts because it's fraudulent, because you kind of know I'm just trying this on. And I call it, it's the equivalent of trying on someone else's skin. When you try to be confident like someone, we say I have a role model, I want to be confident just like she is, and you try to pretend to be like that person is, you're trying on her skin, and guess what? It's not going to fit. You want supernatural confidence. So you're going to stop trying on people's skin because it won't fit. Supernatural confidence, you don't have to try on. It comes from you. It was already packed into you in advance. So what you do is you go through a process of unpacking these things. That's where you get to reinventing, which I said, all the speakers, we didn't get together and say, let's all talk about reinventing. Let's all talk about how we started in one place and ended up somewhere more miraculous. I want to say this. I don't do a lot of speaking at arts events where they're talking about artist careers. Because when we talk about entrepreneurship and business in those settings, it's usually always presented as the backup, the thing you do when the thing you really wanted to do didn't work out. So first of all, let's talk about the fact that your first option isn't even always the best option. If someone said, we will pay you to go back and do what you originally wanted to do, which was just to play the piano, there is not an amount that I would take, because I understand now that the influence I was destined to have could not be locked up in just this instrument. If I were still playing, no microphone in sight, all you got was Mozart and Chopin, you'd be impressed, but you wouldn't be impacted. One of the things that would happen, and what is already happening to you, is that you are reinventing. People say, how do you reinvent? It is not a gimmick that you have to learn how to do. It's not an act that you pick up. It's not something you have to try and become. Reinventing is actually a process of backwards discovery. So that scripture, he was saying, go back towards the womb. Instinctively, we run away from it. We're born and we start running into the unknown. Why are we going to the unknown? The unknown doesn't even know you. That's why it's called the unknown. You should be running backwards from where you came from. I started taking this backwards walk, and I saw that there was this theme of rhythm in my life. I found this old picture of myself playing African bongos in my diapers. And I asked my dad, what was I playing along to? And he said, he used to play this African drumming record called Olatunji. And I would just beat the bongos along with it. I didn't realize that when I was drawn to the drum line, when I was drawn to starting a percussion and dance ensemble, when I was drawn to percussive music, when I was drawn to beats, that I already knew as a baby. You know before you can talk what you're going to end up doing later. The job is you have to purposely now as an adult walk backwards and say, what have I been laying down that I got to pick back up? I want you to start believing, first of all, that you don't have an end, that you're never finished. See, our big problem is we're so fearful of the day we die. There's this day coming where I'm no longer going to be here, so I got to cram in as many achievements possible as I can. As many one-liners and big events. I got to have big events happen. Is that just me? I'm the only one who thinks like that. I have to have big events happen before such and such a date. I was supposed to be on the cover of Time magazine by the time I was 25. That didn't happen. I'm way past my Pulitzer Prize date and everything. But I had all these things planned out and mapped out. And the closer I got to those dates, the more stressed and anxious I felt that things hadn't happened. If you don't even believe you have an end in the first place, and you start to imagine that instead of dying, what happens is until the day you leave this earth, you get multiple chances to have multiple iterations of yourself exist. So someone said, what version are you on, Jade? I said, I'm on like Jade 12.0 at this point, right? So next year, I can't promise you what I'm going to be doing, but I will promise you it won't look exactly like this. And that's exciting. It means that between now and the time I leave the earth, how many more larger versions of myself can I become? And you do that by moving backwards. You have to first say, I believe that I don't have an end, that I get to keep creating and keep becoming, and there's no age limit to that. And when you do that, then you say, what do I do? I have to boldly accept the invitation to reinvent every time it's presented. Some of you have been presented with opportunities this last week that you said no to because they were outside your wheelhouse. You thought you didn't have enough experience for them. You thought you had too much experience. They don't look exactly like the thing you were going after. And so you said no. I dare you to go back and look and see if there's a yes in there. Because usually that thing that makes us uncomfortable is the thing we need to say yes to. And you will not believe what breaks out. When I started creating these concert adventures, I got really addicted to the freedom and wondered, what else can I do? What else will people let me get away with? And so I've created something that's a bit of an homage to my father, who clued me in on the African drumming. And I thought, can I take something from my past, blend it with what my present now is, and create something slightly futuristic? And this is what we got.